Welcome to the Women in My World podcast. I'm Shari Rigby. Do you need some inspiration in your life to keep walking in your faith as you step into your calling? The Women in My World's guests will impact you as they share their triumphs and their tragedies through the art of storytelling as we discuss the world today and how they are influencing it. The show is dedicated to women who put their faith into action by tackling critical real-life issues that will change and impact the world. I'm excited to share the mic with celebrities, authors, influencers, trailblazers, and world changers as they dig deep into how they overcome by leaning into Christ. Point of Grace's soaring melodies and rich harmonies have helped define the sound of contemporary Christian music for nearly 3 decades. With total sales in excess of 8 million units, the group has garnered 2 platinum records, 3 Grammy nominations, 27 number 1 singles, and numerous Dove Awards. Inducted into the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame in 2018, Point of Grace has released 10 best-selling studio recordings and 4 Christmas albums. The group founded the groundbreaking Girls of Grace Conference, and they have authored multiple books, including their latest, How You Live, Lessons Learned from Point of Grace. Well, you guessed it. Today, my guest, Point of Grace. Welcome to the Women in My World.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, how are you? It's so good to see your faces. And just, gosh, you guys have been so busy.
We have been busy.
Yeah, we really have been. We kind of turned a corner after COVID and everything. And I think things are finally feeling like they're ramping up again, which is nice.
Yes.
Right. It keeps us busy, right?
Yes.
Well, I'm just so thankful y'all are here. And I wanted to ask you, we always start our conversations with this one question. And reason being is because as we shepherd, disciple, mentor women, this seems to be a really big topic, and especially in today's culture. So what I would love to ask and have you share about is how you define success.
Oh, gosh. That's a really loaded question.
Mm-hmm.
I think that success for us, I think we would all maybe say this, but everyone can answer for themselves. But we're all moms and wives. And I think for us, true success, the definition has changed over the years. And as a wife and a mom, if you can keep your house intact and your house in order, and I don't mean in physical order, I mean in emotional order and spiritual order, that would define success for me, for sure.
That's good.
I mean, for me, this is going to sound so, I don't mean for it to be, but
she's so,
I know, really not, which is why I can't find a word for I'll be honest with you, contentment, and with contentment, commandments. Just do the 10 commandments. That in itself, I mean, that's success. Like, oh, good, good. When I meet my maker, good.
Yeah.
But contentment, reality, contentment, just being happy with where I am, where he has me, and what I have.
I love that.
I mean, yeah, what they said, ditto. But I would just say, I think for me, I feel like I feel successful when I am praying and hoping that I am providing peace into the world, God's peace around me. Like when I can change the temperature of a room because God's peace is over me and the kindness that he has provided me shows up. When that shows up, I feel like I've had a successful day.
Let's just do success
today.
I might even take it to the minute by minute anymore. It's just
we'll get you a couple minutes under your belt.
Exactly. Just getting through it. That's why I guess he says his mercies are new every morning, right? So
thank goodness for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love those answers, and I think it's a huge topic that we're all facing today, especially the culture that we're living in, because everything in the culture says that you have to be like this, you have to be able to do this, you have to live like this, or you have to have a certain amount of success to be actually successful in the world's eyes. But that's not really biblical at all, right? Because that's not at all the way the Lord looks at it. And so thinking back just to, going back to our journeys, to me is just walking through the journeys with the Lord is so much of our success, right? It's just really getting to know who he is and who we are in him. And so I would love for, I know there's three of you, but what I'd love to just kind of tackle and throw these questions out at you, and however the Holy Spirit is leading you, that you would answer. But I'd love for you to take us on a little bit of a journey through what it's been like to, do life, do family, and also walking in the call that God's put on your lives, obviously, as singer-songwriters, ministry leaders. What does that look like for you guys?
Um, it looks different now than it did, when we first started 30 years ago, for sure. It's interesting. We just did another interview with an old friend of ours from the group For Him. I don't know if you remember them or not. But,
I'm like, wait, do I say that? Yes.
yeah, I know. But just in talking about, in some of our very, very busiest days as artists and as new moms, just sort of the fog that we were living in during that time, um, almost in some ways was God's protection over us. Like, don't get the big head. I mean, we were too tired to get the big head. You know what I mean? And so I think just as God has grown us up in Him and we've matured in Him, walking in that calling now is so much more intentional than it used to be. And just to be able to really slow down and take every opportunity that we have now to share from our heart and our vulnerabilities about where the Lord has brought us, instead of just sort of autopiloting our way through a concert. I think that is a real positive change that comes with age. And a lot of people, just like you said, how the world wants us to be, well, what's the number one thing? And the number one, the number one quality that everyone's reaching for, no matter what, it's youth. I mean, it's, what can we do to look younger? How can we be younger? How can we, and really as a Christian, like, age is a gift, because with age comes wisdom.
Yeah.
And so you're just exchanging one good thing, which is youth and being, spry for
a few less wrinkles.
Yeah, for wisdom. And so to be content to walk in that place of life and not have to chase the never ending fountain of youth and material things is sort of kind of like where we're walking right now. And it's such a great place to be. Yeah.
There's freedom in it, right? I was just saying that yesterday. I said, we go through all these different, it's like a decade, right? It's like your 10 years. You go through these different phases every 10 years. And I'm like, man, I finally reached the stage where I'm really happy with who God has created me to be. I mean, I just feel like I'm free. I'm free.
Yeah.
I feel good about where I'm at in life. I love my marriage. I love my family. I love, not that it's always easy, but there's freedom in that. Like, and then the older I get and I'm in this next portion of my life as an empty nester and where I'm at in my career, like, there's freedom in it. I actually feel like I can walk and go, I have my days, but
yeah. Even when
okay.
Shelley was talking, that was the word that came to my mind, was freedom. I mean,
freedom.
What makes, with contentment, why am I contented? Because I recognize what freedom in Christ looks like.
Yeah.
And even feels like. I know we're not necessarily supposed to involve our emotions because they don't have brains, but there is a revelation in recognizing that God's gifts to us is what gives us that freedom. And for me, it was forgiveness. For me, it was His mercies. For me, it was His constant grace, and recognizing what that grace looks like in my life. And how do I apply that grace to being a mom, being a wife, being a sister, being a friend, and still learning, still learning all that. But I think for me, that freedom in those beautiful, great characteristic traits that have redeemed all of us, that is, that's where I am. That's where I am in my walk right now. Just really appreciating what those gifts are, and that it's just helping me be a better me. I'm enough. That's enough. I'm not enough. He's enough through me.
Yeah, that's good. It's really good. Yeah, I think that's such a powerful message too, and you guys have such a powerful message, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes about what you do through your conference and your books and your message and your singing. And I was so blessed to be able to be in Michigan with you ladies,
I
and just it
know.
was so much fun.
Fun.
To see the hearts changing there and to see the women and their faces. And so we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But I think something that I love in getting into these conversations is also to ask you, because this is another point of conversation so often, is, did you know when God, the calling on your life, did you know what he was calling you to? Did you know at that very moment when he said, you're going to come into this, you're going to be singing, you're going to be this group together? Did you guys know that, or how did that all kind of come about for y'all?
Well, I definitely didn't have that like moment. I know some people feel like I was called to the ministry at this point. I don't think it was that for any of us really in that specific moment. I do think that all of us, nothing has changed in this, that we love music. We all have our own musical stories growing up with sisters that we sang with, or family members, or however, choirs that we sang with. And we all love God and love sharing God through music. And that has been something that I think all of us have felt. I do know, I always loved the stage growing up and everything, but it was when I did Christian music that I really felt like I was at home. Like that, I did feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. And it wasn't, but I thought that was just like a dream of mine to, cause I love Sandy Patty and I loved Amy Grant, and wouldn't that be nice? But that's not really what God has for me. And it was a slow journey. We were in college, and it was the next step of, hey, we're going to do this for a summer. And then the Lord just kind of did more, and it kind of grew from there. And then we met someone at a record company, and that began, I don't think even when we did that, we would have thought, here we are in our 50s.
Yeah. We can all say it.
And about to, release a new record and all of that. I don't know that we would have ever dreamed that for our lives. And still, when we go out and sing, it's just like, Lord, I can't believe you allow us to do this. Like that is a gift. And so I don't know that for anybody, unless I miss somebody that had one day, this is my calling kind of thing. It's kind of been just stepping into the next moment of where God opened up the door.
I remember, I do remember graduating college, and I had a conversation with my mom. It was a very brief conversation, and because we all went to Christian colleges, and that conversation was just, I love Christian music. Like Denise was saying, I love Christian music. I'd love for that to be what helps put food on my table, but I don't know what that looks like.
Right.
And I remember my mother saying, well, if you want to dedicate your gift that God's given you, then dedicate it to him and see what he does. And so I literally walked the aisle of my little Baptist church, and I shared with the pastor that I wanted to dedicate this gift that he had given me, and I want to give it back to him. So a moment of when that happened, I can tell you when that moment was. Wow. But it was just based on great godly counsel from my mom,
Yeah. No, that's so good. I love that. That was kind of where I feel like also our lives. I mean, if we all could, we had the time to sit here and think about even going back into our childhood, what God was doing and bringing to the surface and honing in our own gifts and talents and things that maybe were happening in our lives at that time. And all of a sudden we go, oh, wow, that was something that was going on back then that he actually is using today. And I didn't even know that that's what he was going to do through that time in my life.
Right.
And I love that part of it. Talk to me a little bit about some of the things that you ladies have gone through, and just there's always highs and lows, right? You have this moment and you go, man, this is going to be the greatest song that we've ever cut. This is like, man, this is where it's going. And then maybe something doesn't quite go right, or maybe something else happens and it's not, our mind goes one way, but it goes a different way. Have you guys encountered that in your journey so far as artists?
How much time you got?
No, I'm like, you're looking at your watch going, let's see.
Right for us. No, definitely. I mean, one thing came to mind just as you were asking that, and um, every career sort of is going to have a peak to it,
Right.
and I think that's. I don't. I think a lot of artists, ourselves included, you don't really know. You don't see it coming. You just think you don't think about it maybe, and so you kind of think, oh, it's just always going to be this way or whatever. And I don't even think it's a pride thing, like, oh, I'm taking this for granted. It's just you just kind of don't think about what it might be like for to not be on top, if that makes sense. And so, um, a lot of success in the world's eyes with Christian music comes from radio. And so that was probably a really hard pill for me to swallow when in the 90s we were like, we could release anything. And we were like, absolutely almost guaranteed a number one. Like we could not do well at radio. It's everything just seemed to come really easy. But you just nobody stays that way forever.
Right.
And
Right.
so I think we really, really, really chased radio on an album called I Choose You so much so. And I was so certain and convinced that the song I Choose You, I just thought it was amazing. We got the right producer. Denise sang it awesome. Like it was so, to me, so current. So I was like, this is it. Like I was so proud of it, and I still am, but it didn't do anything. It didn't do anything at radio. And I think that was the point where I was like, well, if that's not going to do anything, then nothing is. So we just can't chase it anymore, And that was a sobering moment, but again, freeing, because then it's like you don't have to try to please the man, or you're working, it's like you're working for the man. And it's to be released from that is very freeing. And now we just make the music that we want to make, and we did have some radio success after that. But it was sort of kind of came at us sideways in the country realm of a song called How You Live, a song called I Wish, which was a great, pleasant surprise. And it was a great shot in the arm, for sure. But, I mean, things definitely, you kind of put your faith and hope and you think this is going to, re-kickstart us. And sometimes it doesn't. And it's really more just the faithful, like everyday steps of moving forward that create a longer path. It's not one song at one time that's going to do that for you anyway. So
yeah. Or I think it almost
really mad about it at the time.
I know that feeling.
I've gotten over it and it's okay.
You get over it and then you go on. Or what's really interesting about that is that sometimes God births something even greater out of that.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I love to see is, when I did the movie October Baby, I remember being so devastated thinking that here I had worked all these years to get this 5 minutes of screen time. And so I went to film the movie and, it's like 5 minutes of screen time by the time, they're done cutting around and that's it.
Yeah.
And I remember for 2 years just going, God, what are we doing? What are we doing? And then the movie comes out and it does what it does. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm going to get the next big movie role. Like this is 2012. I'm like, this is it. Like people are, and I'm, you're just going. And then all of a sudden it's like, I didn't get another movie role for 2 years.
Yeah.
But what God did was he birthed a ministry out of it. So it was like, I'm going to put you on holy ground. I'm going to let you do these things, but I'm going to call you into something that actually glorifies my name even greater than what you think that this could be. And then I'm going to bring it back around because I'm going to grow you and I'm going to sharpen you through the process.
Right.
And that's been a really tough, I don't want to say that's easy because it's really tough and it's very challenging. And I remember sitting on my couch crying out to God going, I knew 2 years later that my heart was going, okay, God, whatever it is that you want. But it didn't make it, I guess, any easier. I knew internally at that point, here, take it. I'll go where you want me to go.
Yeah. It is a very hard pill to swallow when women who are type A, me, probably you, it's a very hard pill to swallow when you realize you cannot make something happen.
Yeah.
You can't sometimes. And when you're used to being able to make something happen or think you make something happen, even if you didn't, and then it doesn't, that's a very sobering pill to swallow.
It's interesting because we now have kids old enough that we're watching them wait
Uh-huh.
and, what's God going to do with this? And why has this not happened? I mean, now we have kids that are living that out. I'll tell you, it's as tough to watch the kid as it is to experience it firsthand.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you just are their cheerleader, and you just, and
Well-
it's hard. But I pray that they've seen our lives enough, or just enough, that it's put a seed of, I really can trust God in the way. Although at their age, I was.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, we kind of do teach our kids, if you work hard, things will pay off, things will,
Will happen.
Will happen. And, and there's just seasons now that we've lived long enough.
Yeah.
Seasons of seeing that sometimes I remember we prayed about a situation with going with a different manager, and we prayed about it. And I feel like we took this step with God's lead, and it just was kind of a mess, and it didn't really make sense.
Yep.
And things didn't really turn out that great. And I remember going, Lord, did I just mishear you? But the truth is, he sometimes takes us into places that aren't going to look and make sense.
Right.
And it's not always, you're going to see the fruit immediately, you know?
So
And,
good.
and there was kind of a season of, I feel like he took us through a desert anyway, of us just kind of, not floundering, but just kind of finding our way to.
Floundering would be a good word.
That's probably a good word.
Not floundering, but floundering.
But it grew. I mean, I am starting to see places where it's grown us closer together. Our families went through some personal things that had things taken off in a different way. We might not have been available in that season to go through, my mom being sick, and I was able to fly home and see her a lot. And, just stuff that you go, I don't know, God obviously knew and knows our seasons. But it's not fun to go through when you don't really know what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I think it's such a great, these are great answers for the women who are listening to this, because so many of them are in these different stages of life, or they've tackled something that they think is going to be that really high, and all of a sudden it's not, And so I think that the more transparent and vulnerable we can be with our own stories and the things that we've struggled with, that's where there's this deep encounter for them to realize, like, hey, wait a minute, I'm not the only one that's going through that.
Yeah.
I know you guys have your children, and also my encounter with you was also hearing you not only sing, but you doing ministry, and you really sharing pieces of your story with an audience and yourselves. So number one, talk a little bit about, what is it like to be a mom raising children on the road? And number two, how did you get from doing, you're still doing concerts, because I saw you in concert, but I also heard this ministry side of you stepping up to share who you were and how God was using you. Like, I just watched these women weeping in the audience. So talk a little bit about that. So you've gone from motherhood, you're still motherhood, but now you're, not only doing these large concerts, but now you're going to different ministry events, and you're really speaking into lives of women.
Well, it kind of happened naturally, in that we all turned 50 at the same time. We're just a few weeks apart.
I'm the youngest.
I'm the oldest.
Yeah,
I'm always the oldest too, Denise. I'm always the oldest too. So
we just so happened to have finished 2 records back to back, a Christmas record and a worship and hymns record. And we were at a place where we knew we needed to think what the nenext page would be. But none of us had another musical, excitement, or, we weren't ready to go back in and sing some more. But yet we were ready to continue, having a message that matters. And so I think it was maybe Shelley, I don't remember, but just that whole idea of one of the most important things as a parent that we can do is pass down the story of God in our lives, especially, but pass down the gospel itself. And so we were working with Lifeway at the time with those records, and so we just kind of continued that relationship with them, and we put together this book called How You Live: Lessons Learned by Women of Grace, and it was an opportunity for us individually to write 13 to 14 essays that personally maybe made us who we are today, things that we learned from great influences in our lives, and things that God had taught us through our own personal lives. And so we put together this book, and but its main purpose was so that our children would have that tangible
Wow.
story, so that they could look back in those pages and see that they weren't just making this up. This was real for them.
Yeah.
And so they could hold it in their hands. And so it turned into what it is today. And again, we are as great as our testimony, and our testimony that represents God's goodness, and his faithfulness and his forgiveness, is worth a platform talking about. And so that's what you got to hear a little bit about. And I don't know, we couldn't have written that book in 25, 35, but
Right.
but at 50, there was a little bit of life that just had a different wisdom impact, if you will. The wise is wasted on the youth. You know what I'm saying?
It is. I know that.
So wasted. But so this was an opportunity to just say thank you to the Lord with our pens, and now we get to talk about it. It adds to the music, to the melodic message that we're doing.
Right.
So it adds to that, and it's just for this time. So we'll see what God does with it. So
I love that. I love that. Well, it definitely, I mean, it's so powerful and you can see it. And I love that you're talking about the lessons that you've learned. And so I think it's a powerful book. I think, women need to be, I actually think this is a great book for men too. I mean, honestly, we're all walking through things in our lives and we need to know that our lessons that we've gone through really do influence the next generation, and how are we leaving them actually better than where we were at. I'm like so thankful my kids they've got messy things going on too, but man, I'm thinking about my life and I'm going, well, you're not as messy as I was. Like, thank God, but there's something we can pass down to them. Um, and I love that. Well, before we go, one couple more little things here, but talk about Girls of Grace, because to me, my heart is women. I always thought when the Lord called me to women, I thought He was making a mistake, and I actually said, "I think you're making a mistake." And He said, "No, no, 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 no." I'm like, "No, no, no, I don't. This is not for me." But talk about Girls of Grace and what that conference looks like, and how women can hear about it, how young women can hear about this and be part of it.
Well, Girls of Grace, we are not doing that conference anymore. So
Oh, okay.
I didn't know if do you still want us to talk about it though? We can talk about, because it was definitely a big season in our lives.
Okay.
We're really doing more kind of what you're doing now. But,
Okay.
but yeah, okay.
Maybe just talk about like how that started and what the influence was like and how it led you to
Okay.
where you're at now.
Yeah, Girls of Grace for us, what was just a kind of an idea that was born out of us being a part of Women of Faith, and watching that conference happen on such a large scale and getting to be a part of that, and going, wow, it would be so cool if there was something like this, but for teenage girls, just to lift them up and encourage them. And I mean, this was several years ago, and it's even harder now. I mean, we probably need to bring it back and put somebody else in charge.
Reboot the
Yeah. Because
I'm telling you, culturally right now,
so
reboot
tough.
with the kids. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. But we really felt called to do that. It was kind of one of those things where we were going out and singing, and then girls would come up to the table and get us to sign their CD, and then to be like, "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" After this. And
right.
so we were finding ourselves almost like being asked to be counselors when we were like feel completely unequipped to be anything like that. And so we were like, what if we had something where we brought people in that really were equipped to speak to teenage girls and had some training, and then we could do the music, and we could also share our own personal stories, but just kind of put something together like that. And so Girls of Grace was sort of born out of that idea. And we had several years where we did conferences that thousands of girls came to. We still meet girls and their moms.
Yeah.
I took my daughter to your Girls of Grace conference in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And it was a really neat season. But that conference for us was a test of our will and patience like nothing else. We were in charge of the whole thing, and there was a big learning curve for us when we started that, and it took a lot. It took a lot out of us, just the logistics of it all. If we could wiggle our nose and be on stage and do that, I mean, and just do it. And that, but as you know, so much goes into the planning of events and stuff. And so, we kind of phased out of that. I think it's just as we got older, we and our kids got older. The first Girls of Grace that we ever did, Caroline was 3 weeks old. That was the first thing I ever did after she was born, was go do a Girls of Grace, which is sweet in a way if you think about that. But it's definitely something I feel like that's so needed. It's so hard to be a teenage girl. It's so hard.
Sherry, you may have put a bug in our ear.
Well, I'm telling you, I think that the culture that we're living in, identity is a huge thing, the crisis of it. I think grace in general for these young ladies who are walking through life as they know it today. It's such a different culture, and what they're going through, social media life, how they have relationships, how they deal with things, how they deal with their own identity, their own, worth, and their relationship with Christ. And so, and I think it's actually only going to get worse. And so that's where we step in between the gap and go, okay, God, how can we be a voice to this next generation, to not speak death over them, but to speak life over them, right? Like they've had so much death spoken over them and so much stuff where there's so much confusion, and our God is a God of clarity. Right. And so the more we can bring clarity and say, no, by the blood of Jesus Christ, you have grace through him. And he's going to, as we've been talking through this whole thing, there's purpose, there's plan, and there's freedom through him, and so I would say, I hope that you pray and consider, but I know those things are tough, mentally, physically, and spiritually. Those things take a lot out on us, but, man, that generation, they just need to be loved on and heard, and seen. They need to be seen in a way that I don't even know if we actually fully comprehend yet what that all looks like. But just there's so much into that. But I would love, please, as we're wrapping up, tell everyone how they can find you. What's next for you guys? I love listening to you. Your Christmas stuff is like, oh, there it is.
That's our new record. Turn Your Eyes. We just got it yesterday. We just got it in, so we're excited about it.
It's beautiful. Are you? Talk about that. Tell us about that. Tell us when it's releasing.
It's coming out the last week, the last Friday in April, the 27th.
Yeah,
and you can get it anywhere you get music. And we actually did. These are called CDs. For anyone who doesn't know what those are, but
with the cover,
it has a cover, it has words in it. But you can go to our website, pointofgrace.net, and pre-order those right now. We just signed 240 of them, so there's one with your name on it for sure. And just excited to get out and sing this new music. We've been practicing it a lot, and have already added some of the new songs into our shows. And we're excited about getting out and premiering all of that stuff. So
follow us on Instagram, Point of Grace Music.
Point of Grace Music.
Kind of will tell you more about.
Pointofgrace.net also gives all of our concert dates, so you can see where we're going to be singing.
And if you want to make a trip to Nashville, we do our Circle of Friends events. We do one in the spring, one in the fall. It's very small because it's an intimate time for us to.
It's kind of a fan weekend.
Really, we spend a lot of time with each other, so it's only like 40 people. But we do those once a year. So we've got one coming up in October. The April one's sold out. So, everybody says, when are y'all out on tour? Well, it's not the word tour, but it's perpetual. We're always out on the road. Yeah. It's just not in 40 cities, 50 cities. It's
right.
It comes and goes.
It's here and there and everywhere.
And everywhere. So pointofgrace.net for all info.
I love it. Well, you guys are you ladies, I should say. I'm so used to, I'm such a boy mom. It's like I'm constantly, the only female that I have in my home is my sweet schnauzer. And other than that, I'm always, around boys.
And you
So
guys, oh, I know.
I mean, how I get my hair done in the day and put lipstick on, I'm not sure, but
you look good.
I was like, man, I got boys. Wait, thank God God's put all these girls around me. But thank you so much, ladies, for being with me. And I love to see your faces. You are just such a light and being such a bright light in this dark world we live in. But I know just through your music and your inspiration and just your words of encouragement, you are really impacting the culture. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, ladies, thank you so much for viewing today and listening. I hope that you were encouraged and inspired through these stories. And we just want to continue to keep growing together and empowering one another through leaning into Christ for all things: purpose, passions, plan, provision. And so make sure that you download this podcast on Edify, Apple, Spotify, and share it with a friend. And we want to say thank you to Edify for sponsoring this podcast. And thank you for being a woman in our world.